May 16th, wow. Wednesday, May 6th, 2015. We're off to a great start. I didn't know where the record button was, and I apparently think we're 10 days in the future. I promise it's going to get better from here on out. So this is the professionalvmware.com vBrownBag US edition. Continuing our series titled What's New in vSphere 6, and tonight we'll be discussing the vSphere web client with Rafay Aziz and Peter Shepard from VMware. Some quick notes before we get started. As always, you can follow us on Twitter. We are at vBrownBag. Our Latin American show is at vBrownBag LATAM, and our EMEA show is vBrownBag EMEA. Or you can check out the hashtag vBrownBag. You can always go to professionalvmware.com/brownbags for all of our past shows and to register for our other podcasts around the world. Quick note, the vBrownBag crew is going to be at the OpenStack Summit in Vancouver in a week or so, and we'll be continuing our vBrownBag Tech Talks series that we will do live. We will be posting all those videos as they are produced, and they'll be up on our YouTube account shortly afterward. So we have a super duper strong lineup this time too. Oh, really? Awesome. Yeah, it is an impressive lineup. Sweet. I haven't seen the schedule yet. And for those of you that might not know that voice, that is Mr. Cody Bunch. So again, tonight our guests are Rafay Aziz from VMware. His email address is raziz@vmware.com. And Peter Shepard. His Twitter is pjshepxl5 or pshepard@vmware.com. My name is Damian Carlson. I'm at 6footdad, and Cody Bunch is running shotgun here. He is good Lord, at Cody_Bunch. Apparently, I need a new brain. So without further ado, I'm going to stop completely messing things up here, and I'm going to pass the ball over to Peter, and we will go from there.
Okie dokie. Hi, my name is Peter Shepard, and I am a user experience architect here at VMware. I'm in my 12th year at VMware, and I have been working on as one of the lead designers on the vSphere web client since 2010. And we're going to give you guys a demo of the performance and usability changes we've made in 6.0 today.
And with Peter, I'm Rafay Aziz. I'm a user researcher here at VMware. Been here for about 3.5 years now, working a lot on vSphere-related things, including the web client. And Peter and I both spent a lot of time what you'll be looking at here today, so we hope we can show you some good stuff. And we're also able to grab our PM last minute for this as well. So, Dennis?
Hi, my name is Dennis Liu. I'm the product manager for vSphere Web Client. I have not been here as long as these two, but I have been trying to make it everything better. Your hate mail can come to me later.
So, as I'm sure you guys are aware, the web client has been less than popular with a small subset of the VMware community. So I'm really hoping you guys have got some awesome stuff to show here.
Well, there's no pressure there, so that's okay.
Makes it amazing.
It's I think that well, as you'll see, we've made some changes. Rafay and I, and at times Dennis as well, have been out on the road showing folks the changes, and demoing for folks and just showing it to them, and getting their feedback. And then as well as we wanted to say is before, what we basically did is in 6.0 is that we really listened loud and clear as best as we could to, and it was quite loud and clear to what folks had been talking about, issues they had with the client. So we actually worked with a set of customers, figuring out what the most, the biggest issues were for them, and as well what impactful changes we could make in the time of this release. And that's what we basically set out and did. And it was a really good experience working with folks. And folks were very straight up about it, and it was great working with them. So I think
that's
with
very
that,
good to hear. And at least you guys weren't part of the SSO team and 5.0, right?
Yeah, well, we know that the 5.1, you know, was painful both for SSO and the web client, as both of them SSO got better in 5.5, and the web client just got a little bit better in 5.5, just enough to have a bunch of you folks jump on it and use it and start giving feedback over Twitter and blogs and Reddit and the VMware community thread. So, you know, it was clear adoption had spiked up, and, you know, you guys went about making the issues quite clear to us, and we appreciate that. So, without further ado, shall I kick it off and give a demo here?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, I've already logged into the system. We're here in Palo Alto, California. This system is talking up to our internal cloud that's up in the state of Washington, data center up there. And as you can see, that I've already logged into the web client, and right off the bat, you can see that we've got your usual home page and the very familiar hosts and clusters tree is quite easily accessible right from the home page. And we know from talking to customers that for the most part, you guys pretty much either live in hosts and clusters or live in VMs and templates. So we're going to hang on to that thought. We've made them very easy to get around and get back to that we'll see later on in the demo. So we've got our familiar trees still, and I can go, of course, click on a data center, click on a cluster. As you can see, we've got the summary pages are still here as well. We've got our set of tabs that we introduced in the web client. So summary, you know, monitor, which is for basically doing everything from looking at trouble to performance. Manage, which is really all about what you have before and edit settings in the desktop client, and also configuration tab as well, and permissions. And last but not least, related objects, which this tab here is the tab that in fact has got all the, you know, the object types that you were used to seeing, some of them being more top level in the desktop client. So those are the tabs we have in the client at this point. And I guess the point is, I know some folks have probably not had a chance. If you've not had a chance to use, you know, 5.5, or you haven't grabbed 6.0 yet and try, that's why I'm doing a little overview here with stuff. And I think is also you'll see some tips, I think, of some more undiscovered features that folks haven't hit when they've used the client in 5.5 even, 6.0. Okay, so, you know, as usual, we can come on over here and right-click on the tree and go ahead and get the action menu. Now, you'll notice if you have used 5.1 or 5.5, we've redesigned the action menu in 6.0 based on your feedback. And what we've really made it like is we've made it as much like the desktop client as possible. The only difference is being, of course, there's new features that came into the vSphere web client that aren't in the desktop client. So we had to make more room for them as well. So, and as usual, you know, that if we look here, that certainly I can right-click on the tree and access actions. I can also come up right here for the cluster and access the action menu here as well. And I'll just go over to related objects and virtual machines. And of course, I can get to the action menu for any of the objects in the list as well, just by right-clicking on them. Okay? So if we come back over to the cluster and decide that we're going to go ahead and make a new virtual machine, we get our new VM wizard. And I'll just go ahead and start creating a new VM. And we know that one of the use cases that goes along for you administrators quite a bit, that occurs, is that you're basically working through this wizard, and of course you get a phone call. So, you know, you're basically part way through, and somebody calls you up and it interrupts you. And you either need to go take a look at the issue they're having, or, you know, sometimes yourself you just want to look up something within the UI. Well, a nice feature that we have in the web client is you can just come up to these little minimize icon and click this. And as you can see, what happened is that the wizard goes ahead and minimizes into work in progress. And essentially now I can navigate around through the UI. So if there was some problem with, potentially with one of the switches or something, we can come over and take a look, take a look at the switch, see what's going on. And when we were ready to come back to it, we could just come right over here, click back here. The wizard is restored and picks up right where you left off. And let's say you got this phone call towards the end of the day, 6:30, 7 at night. You're still in the office, and you realize, you know what, I got to get out of here. I got to go home, and I'll deal with this after I get home. When you go home and log back into the web client and bring up the wizard, restore the wizard, it'll be right where you left off. So in other words, we've really saved this wizard state for you across sessions, making it so you can just pick up where you left off and keep working. Okay? Now, we could also come in and, of course, right-click and say start one of the virtual machines. So if we start up the virtual machine, you'll see down here our recent tasks pane, which is now restored to be by default at the bottom of the screen, just where you folks said very clearly you wanted it back. So now we've got the recent tests now back at the bottom in wide-bodied layout. And there's a couple things I want to tell you about it. One of the things we've done is we've made it so it's more live than it was before in the previous versions of the web client. But not only that, so we have actually, in the web client configuration file that goes with the web client server, we actually have a parameter in there that allows you to adjust how frequently recent tasks refreshes. So you can basically, for your set of administrators, you can come in and tune it to be kind of as live as you want, as you find performance, to be in your environment. So you can basically salt it to taste. And we know that that sometimes the refresh of the UI can be kind of disruptive, as in it might clear the selection or scrolling. We've been taking a look at those things, but the other part is so we actually have this refresh rate independent of the refresh for the UI. So you can basically make recent tasks be more live than it was before, okay? So as a bonus for the recent tasks, we've actually now introduced that you can now rearrange these panes. So what I just did is I just moused down and grabbed the title bar for the alarms pane, and let's go ahead and put it down at the bottom here to be in also more classic desktop client configuration. Okay, so now you can basically get your nice recent tasks at the bottom and your alarms at the bottom as well. And let's say that, you know what, I really want all the space in the tree. So what I'm going to do is come along here and tuck the, and of course, when you're giving a demo, sometimes things go a little wrong. So that was interesting. The nice thing is that if things do go wrong, or you find you get yourself into an orientation that you are not happy with, you can come in here and click Reset to Default Layout. And I went kind of fast there, but I got to it through the user menu here. So just the user menu, Layout Settings, Restore to Default Layout. Let's try this once again for grins. So if I come in here and tuck it under, there we go. That's how I wanted to see it. So now it's basically, I've got it so it'll use all the space with the tree. I can get the full tree and have it take all the space. You can also come up over here and, for instance, also unpin and buy yourself some room and come back and spring it back into view. Okay? So, and once again, all these layout changes are remembered across sessions. So when you come and log back into the client tomorrow morning, you'll find that this is arranged the same as you left it, which is nice. Also, our very awesome team in Sofia, Bulgaria, did also a nice, the developers over there did a very nice enhancement too, that it actually is, if you have multiple monitors, it actually remembers these per monitor. So you can actually do it on different monitors and rearrange them differently. Okay. So let's take a look at the tables as well. So if we come in and take a look at
a quick question for you here.
Shoot, and my apologies that I certainly meant to say in the beginning is absolutely, please interject with questions.
Graham Mitchell actually has two questions. The first one is, how long can you store a job on the side?
Forever.
Okay, challenge accepted. The second one is, the layout stay across browsers, so between Chrome and IE?
I think that the layouts would I think it would be one layout. I don't think we will remember it per browser.
I'm not sure. We'll have to check on that. But my expectation is that per browser, per machine, it's probably stored as a local cookie.
Mm-mm.
No?
No.
No?
We remember the layout. The layout server side.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
My apologies. Yeah. Layout is stored server side. And we basically stored those things server side so that you could, in fact, you know, switch machines, et cetera.
Okay.
Excellent. So I don't recall if I mentioned it at the top of the show, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask them within the webinar interface. We have been muting people by default for a long time just to help cut down on a lot of background noise. But if you'd like to ask us a question in person, feel free to raise your hand to be unmuted. Or you can tweet the vBrownBag hashtag, and I will make sure that your question gets asked. Thank you.
One comment about the work in progress as well is if you do restore it, and there's been a change in your environment such that it invalidates the page, it'll catch those errors and show you to them. You basically go back to the step where, you know, for instance, if for some reason, let's decide we got rid of that cluster we were provisioning into. Is it the wizard, in fact, when you restore it, will handle that. Okay. Let's go back and take a look again at the. So if we go ahead and take a look at one of our tables here, is that if I right-click on a column, I can basically choose to show and hide columns. And so, for instance, if I did in fact want to see sort of right in the table, for instance, what host this VM is on, you know, I can easily come in and show that. And let's suppose that actually I would like that to be a little bit more over here. And you know what, I'm not too worried about the EVC mode, okay? So I can go ahead and rearrange the table. I can also rearrange how much space it's taking, including, there's actually something that's pretty nice here, size all columns to fit. It'll tighten it up. And as well, so maybe I still come in and say, you know what, I want a little more space for the name, because sometimes the names get longer. So all these changes I've made here in our main tables in the UI, which says throughout the related objects tables in the user interface, these changes are remembered across sessions as well. So you can basically now lay out your tables however you want them, and they'll stay that way. And then a nice feature is if we crunch this down, is that the name field is actually locked. So if we scrolled, the name will stay put, and we'll be able to see the different attributes more to the right in that case. A very common question we get about the client that folks remember from the desktop client is can I export data from the table out to Excel? And the answer to that is you can indeed. And if you come right down here in the lower right corner, we kind of tucked it away a bit. But essentially, if I click on that icon, we can go ahead and export the list contents. We can basically do it for all objects, and we can choose which columns to export. So let's suppose, well, and I wanted a couple more, right? We can go ahead and choose those columns without having to choose them in the table itself. This won't make any changes table. Now, there's a little bit of a, bump in this workflow. And then what you have to do is first you need to click Generate the CSV report. And then from there you need to click Save. And you can fill it out and save it to your hard drive. Okay? So, as usual with demos, sometimes you get little weird errors. Okay. So, not only can you export things, but as well, you can also copy to clipboard. It's that as you come right down this little arrow here, we can basically copy to clipboard the selected items only, or we could do copy all. And then as well, we could come into, one of our other apps and go ahead and come in and paste it, and we'll see it's basically comes in CSV form. Cool. Okay. Onwards.
I've got a quick question.
Sure.
Is there a browser that the web client is better suited for?
So we had some tests in the past that showed Firefox was slower, but we recently redid those and basically found out that it's a negligible difference between the different browsers.
Excellent. All right. Thank you.
Cool. Okay. So one thing that often happens is you're off in the UI. So let's go ahead and go back to Home. And let's go down into some good old part of the UI that I'm sure you folks have a lot of fun working in, the licenses part. And we're way deep into licenses or products. And we can be off anywhere in the UI. What we've done now is that we heard from the customers very much that you guys want to be able to get back to your trees faster. So what we've actually done is introduced up in the Chrome here, is you'll notice that we have now we've now got a home menu right up at the top here. And this is actually on hover rather than on click. And I can just basically hover right over it, and I can basically now jump back to my trees or any of the other top level areas of the UI in one click. Okay. I'm running a development system, so that's why I have these oddities at the bottom there. So this makes it really nice. So essentially, it makes it very, very easy to go in and jump around in the UI and start taking a look at different areas and easily get back to any one of the trees that you wanted to get back to very quick. Now, if you do like still going back to Home because you like the larger icons or because we have some additional links in Home, that we've preserved one click back to Home by using a standard web, kind of a standard web app interaction. And you can just click right there on the web client title, jump right back to Home. And then, for instance, here we've got some deeper links. So if you want to go in and check out the any VM storage policies you created, etc., that you can just jump right back in there. And then once again, easily, quickly, right back to hosts and clusters. Okay.
Is there a way to use the web client to connect directly to a host rather than to vCenter?
There is not at this time. Currently, what you want to use to do that still is the desktop client, which we are still supporting the desktop client in 6.0. So you can use the desktop client, against, vCenter server, 6.0, and as well as hosts. Okay. So one of our little bit of best kept secrets a little bit in the client is that we've got not only can you basically get back to your hosts and clusters easy, but we have a really easy way to navigate between the objects you've been using most recently. So right here in this little back clock with the backwards arrow is our recent objects list. And this has the 10 most recent objects I've been working with. And what's great about this, so there's right, I was looking at that switch a bit ago. I can jump right back to the switch easily. I can get back in, get right back to desktop 1 quite easily. And as I said, so the length of this, it's 10 objects. If I create new objects, I'll go ahead and get a separate section for new objects, making it very easy to get to them. And what's nice as well, this is remembered across sessions. So you may notice that there's some additional servers, for instance, in different objects that I didn't navigate to so far in this demo that appear. And that's because those are ones I navigated to in a previous session. Okay? So what's interesting is we just found that items like this in the Chrome have been kind of hard for folks to discover. So this is really a useful little tool, and highly recommend you use it. A similar tool to that is that if you come on over here and look in this far corner, we've kind of got this little, basically little tree-like looking widget. This is basically the hierarchy widget. And think of it as a kind of breadcrumb of where an object lives, but expressed more just in a hierarchy. So I can come on a VM or a host or any kind of object and easily see its parents, and in both of the trees that it lives in as well. Okay. Now, if you work in the tree a bunch, you don't tend to need that as much. So it's not quite as useful. So another thing that we have that has actually been in here since in the client since 5.1, of course, is going to the browser. Now, basically, we're in a web environment, and we are in the browser. And for instance, I can take and actually create bookmarks. So I can actually create a bookmark that is going to be, will get me right back to that VM. So for instance, I can go off once again into storage, be hunting it around, and actually have one-click access to get right back to my virtual machine. Okay, which is nice. You can also take these links and stick them in an email and send them to folks. And if they haven't logged in yet, they'll be, basically they'll authenticate, and then it will go right on this page, which is really nice. So another area of the UI that we have that we originally have had as well in 5.1 and 5.5, but now we've split it out to be clearer. And then we now have our vCenter inventory lists are still here, but they're separated from the trees because those concepts were clearly very different for you users. So we separated them to make it much clearer. And here, for instance, I can easily get to, this is the flat list of all virtual machines across all vCenter servers that I'm able to see in the web client. And this same thing goes, for instance, the list of clusters. So what we found is some customers start gravitating to this because now they don't have to drill down through the trees to get to their clusters, for instance. They can get there very quick. And a lot of times I like this view a great deal, so I actually make this, I go ahead and make this to be a bookmark. And when I log in, usually I'll come in and click this bookmark and go ahead and start there, for instance. So basically come in and start off right here, kind of in the center of my universe, which is the clusters for me. Okay, a couple more things to show you. Global search has been a very popular feature in the web client as well as the work in progress. So we can come here quite easily and start typing, and we just basically start typing and we start getting a hit list just very quickly. And we basically can get a nice short hit list of the different types of objects that matched our criteria, so we can easily jump to that in one click. Or what we could also do, for instance, well, this was even kind of, let's just go a little bit farther. There we go. That's good. Or I can go ahead and look at all results. So now this will basically take me to all the virtual machines. In this case, that's what matched in our search. And as you can see, we could basically see them in the table and act on them, as well as if you wanted to look at the details of each of these virtual machines, you can do that. So for instance, if we're looking at VM hardware, we can go ahead and take a look for, whoops, excuse me, right back to there. We can go ahead and inspect the details of all the objects that matched in our search quite easily. So I just click down, and one thing that's nice about the web client as well is when you are looking at a particular view for a particular object type, it will stay on that view until you change it. So for instance, if I want to go and see what networks things are on, I can switch up there, go to related objects, and it'll just stay put. So I can just inspect a set of objects very easily using this as well. So I think this takes us through a lot of the core changes that we made in the client. The big ones being that, once again, coming back to it, that we in fact came along and rearranged the actions menu. We restored recent tasks to the bottom as well. And we've also, we introduced the home menu, and also gave you the ability to rearrange objects too. And also, so I brought up the topic of the configuration file. And I want to give you another tip about the configuration file. One thing it also has in it is that some of you may notice in your environments that when you get a certain number of objects, like virtual machines, and it exceeds a certain number, that number being in 5155, very low, in fact 20, that if I had 20 virtual machines, I would actually get what we call a roll-up node for the virtual machines. And there I would then see the list of them in the middle here, and and it says 20 virtual machines, and if I open one, it would just open just that one under the roll-up node. Well, there's been a lot of feedback that folks really don't like us messing with your trees. So we've done two things. And that is, number one, we actually upped that roll-up node limit to be 100, so it doesn't collapse as soon. Because really the reason why we've done this is to kind of control performance when we get to scale in a large number of objects. So that's why we introduced this concept. But the other thing is that in the configuration file, you can kick that up, once again salting to taste based on performance, and you can even set it to 0. If you set the roll-up to 0, it will never roll them up. So you will just always have, for instance, all the virtual machines right in your tree directly.
Just for a quick reference, the config is in the web client properties file and is called aggregation threshold, and you can set different ones for different types of objects.
Great. Thanks, Dennis.
That's excellent. So I've got a question for folks that are running a Windows vCenter. Is it possible to use the vSphere 6 web client with a 5.5 vCenter by upgrading the actual web client service itself?
You can't directly upgrade the web client server. I mean, you probably could if you hacked it, but that's not a supported configuration, so we won't talk about that. The way to do it is if you have an external SSO, you upgrade that to a vSphere 6.0 SSO. We now call it Platform Services Controller, shortened PSC. I don't know if you've seen this in the documentation before, but basically you upgrade your external SSO to PSC, and then you stand up a new vCenter Server 6, which has the web client server in it. Because we're no longer allowing this separate deployment thing where you can install inventory service and web client server and vCenter server on different machines. It all comes in a single bundle. So once you've installed that new vCenter 6 and you log into its web client, every vCenter server that's connected to the same PSC will be visible to you. That includes your, well, at least your 5.5 nodes. Your 5.1 nodes won't be supported. So you'll get a single pane of glass from that vCenter 6 web client version, and you can do all the actions that you expect, and everything should work seamlessly.
We've had a lot of the customers when we went on the roadshow have asked about that. So I think a lot of them have wanted to be able to take advantage of getting these enhancements we've made to the web client, and of course, but not upgrading their entire 5.5 system yet.
So running in that supported configuration that you just mentioned, I'm assuming that you would need 2 separate vCenter licenses in order to do that properly, right?
Yes, you'd need, well, so another option instead of standing up that new one is if you're willing to upgrade one of your 5.5s to 6.0, I mean, you're still going to need a 6.0 license. We're not currently offering any sort of standalone installer for the 6.0 web client.
Got it. All righty. Thank you.
So I was going to say that happy to entertain questions. If anybody would like me to demo something for them, I'm happy to do that, since we clearly have a nice amount of time left.
Yeah, and again, if anybody wants to see any specific functionality, feel free to tweet at VBrownBag or the vBrownBag hashtag, or throw it up, toss it up here in the webinar interface. I do have one comment that the vSphere 6 client looks like it sucks less than the 5.5 one.
You do hear that a lot.
I'll take it.
Yeah, well, I'll take that. Hey, woohoo! Yeah, I think
yeah.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that it appears to be a more positive direction. Yeah, my most favorite recent tweet about it is, I think someone saying they were compared it to Game of Thrones, and I said that the vSphere web client was even less popular than Joffrey. So that's saying a lot. So we're glad to move up. We're glad to move up into in a little more positive sucks less territory. We'll take that.
Wow, Joffrey, that's a bold statement. I mean, what's worse than that? Like maybe Roose Bolton? Is it like the next step from that one?
Maybe.
That's pretty harsh.
Except he's not dead yet.
That's very true. Very true. All right. So got a couple requests for demos here. The first one is, would you mind showing how to move the recent tasks pane to the bottom again?
Oh yeah, sure thing. So let's go ahead and, so let's suppose I don't like this wacky configuration I've done now. So if you come up right up here to the user menu, go to Layout Settings, and then you can just click Reset to Default Layout. And
excellent.
Voila! It goes back and is back just how we had it before.
Cool.
Right. So I guess out of the box for 6.0, this is what you see. So what we were showing earlier was a customized view, but this is out of box layout that you'll see.
It's right there with the recent tasks put back where you folks clearly said they belonged. Happy to do that. Oh yeah, right. This is a good one. Dennis just reminded me that we do in fact have some shortcut keys in the web client as well. And that'll take you to some of the main places in the UI. So for instance, I don't use these very often, but oh, look at that. So I just hit Control-Alt-S, and then I'll jump you here. Control-Alt-1, as I recall. Oops, nope, got the focus there now, so let me get back out. Control-Alt-1. Control-Alt-1 takes us back to home, and we've got a variety of these, and they're published up there now as well. We've actually been looking at wanting to make that a little bit more apparent for you folks. But so that's a good tip as well. Another one is that I think I set up this environment to actually use tags a little bit. So, for instance, folks have just started to take advantage of the fact that you can have tags. So I had actually set up a tag category called owner that, in fact, had me in it. And as you can see, currently I don't own anything. So, but if I went back, so I'll go ahead and go back right back to good old hosts and clusters. Said, you know what? Let's go ahead and take a look at the cluster. And look at the virtual machines and select the first two of them, right-click, and say that I wanted to assign a tag. So it's very easy for me to come in here and be confused. Okay, sounds good. Okay, so I'm just going to do something quick here. Oh, here's a new tag. So let's suppose instead what I'm up to is great. Is I'm going to go ahead and do this instead for Dennis. So we can come in and assign Dennis. Dennis now owns these two desktops. And we're getting just an interesting oddity here. So I'm going to click OK. That's not OK. It's official. It's always when you go to give a demo, right, is when a little bit of trouble starts. So let's go ahead and take a look at desktop 1. Famous last words. I just did this recently. Aha. So this one was in fact assigned to another person, different person. But we could have gone ahead and changed that or come in to look at the server as well. And I'll go ahead and show you. You can also come in through our handy dandy portlets, what we have, and you can do actions right here on them as well. There we go. I don't know what the glitch was the first time around, but it was a little glitchy. So some folks have started to take advantage of that as well. Other things, would anyone like to see some other stuff that I can show?
Yeah, absolutely. So just a couple related ones here. Which plugins work with the web client, such as Upgrade Manager or SRM?
They're pointing at me because this is a touchy subject. SRM now has a web client plugin. I believe it launched last year sometime. Update Manager, unfortunately, still relies on the desktop client, one of the major reasons we shipped desktop client with vSphere 6. We are working on this very, very hard. When I say it is our top priority, you do not understand how high of a priority that is. I can't make any promises as to when the web client version of Update Manager will be fully available, but I hope to make it as soon as possible.
We do have that. There's VRealize Operations, VROps now has got a very nice plugin for the web client, which they essentially what they do is extend objects so that you essentially get kind of just the top level health information right here in Monitor. So it's just extended right here in Monitor. And then as well, you can always go to look at more details by coming from the Actions menu, and you can come down here and basically do vRealize Ops and open in vRealize Ops, and it will launch vRealize Operations and open the VM right in there. And you can go the other way too. So you can be in vRealize Operations Manager and say, open this VM that you're looking at, or a cluster, for instance, other objects. You say, open in vSphere Web Client, and it'll hop on over to the vSphere Web Client as well.
Excellent. What other, or are there any extra components that the web client requires, such as a specific version of Java?
You mean on the client side or on the server side? Because the server side, everything is bundled in together when you install vCenter. On the client side, all you should need is just the Flash, which, you know, if you're using Chrome, comes bundled with. So we sort of encourage people to use Chrome in that sense.
Okay. And what changes were made in order to help boost the performance of the client?
That encompasses well over 100 to 500 bugs. Some of it is things that you might consider kind of silly. We may have been retrieving more data than was necessary, and that load either slows down vCenter, thus it's slower to respond, or it just means there's more data coming back that you're waiting for, even though you're not displaying it. We made a lot of those kinds of fixes. Some of it is, if you'll notice some of the portlets inside the summary screen he has up right now, some of them actually take quite a while to load. Even if he clicks on some right now, it could take a while to get the information. So for some of the ones that were, let's say, not that useful or not as necessary and also took a very long time to load, we set them to close automatically or close by default so that information wouldn't get retrieved. If you want to see it and you open it, you'll get the data you want, and it'll actually also remember that that's one that you're interested in, so it'll keep opening that. I mean, in theory, it could degrade your performance. It shouldn't be that noticeable on most environments, though. That is also a setting you can do in the web client properties file. There's some flag where you set that every single one of these portlets is closed all the time, and you may see some performance benefit. It's all up to you.
Yeah, it's really nice. You can adjust that based on the performance you find as a user. The other thing is that, as you can guess, like the theme has been for other features as well, it's remember to cross sessions, including, you know, you can rearrange. You can basically rearrange as well. We can come up and rearrange the portlets, and this will be remembered per session. And this is for each object type, right? But as Dennis said, basically, if I go ahead and close any of these portlets, the UI no longer goes and gets the data. But as Dennis said, there was a big, from the customers, you guys made it really clear to us in our basically some on-site sessions of what the top performance items were to work on. And that's what we went and worked on. Number one for users, if I recall correctly, was the Actions menu. So we've now done it so that you'll notice that now the Action menu basically pretty well populates instantly. Now, it'll take a little bit sometimes to still disable the menu items, but you'll notice we kind of now just do it as you go over them rather than try to do them all at once over the different hierarchical menus, which would have, you know, been a little more expensive. So, and we've actually really made the performance even at disabling the menus, which is, you know, a calculation based on both the state of the object, status of the object, and your own permissions on that object. So we've done a lot of work to make that faster as well. So it was Actions. I think right after that, as folks said, you know, I want to see the you know, the lists go as much faster than they were, right? So we did work in here as well on the different lists in the UI. And I think after that started coming, you know, summary and settings as well. And then last but not least, folks said that they certainly wanted login to be faster, but that was more towards the bottom of their list since they don't log in as often. But of course, the killer that you are right-clicking all the time was, you know, top priority, quite understandably so.
He didn't show the login for obvious reasons. There's no reason to spend time on that, but it has gotten a lot faster. Hopefully, when you upgrade to 6, you'll notice it. It's gone from, I don't know, multiple tens of seconds to hopefully 10 seconds or 20 seconds.
Yeah, that's always good. The tuning or configuration parameters that you've mentioned, do you know if they're documented either in the online documentation or in the knowledge base?
There should be some mention of some of the parameters in some of the KBs, but if you actually go to the file itself, you'll actually see that all the configuration has comments in there that basically explain how to use them.
Yeah, it's really well commented. And thanks for bringing that back up again, because I also wanted to talk about another setting. So let's suppose you're in an environment where you don't want your admins messing around and rearranging the windows. There's also a configuration or rearranging the panes. There's a configuration file attribute there to disable that. So if you think it's too sharp-edged for folks to use, you can control that.
Alrighty, I'm kind of digging through some of the questions here to see what hasn't already been asked. Is there a tree view for nested vApps, or do they still appear in a single list view?
No, the vApps, if I'm not mistaken, a vApp will certainly appear in the tree. I happen to have not created any, but I'm confident that they would show up and be in a and go ahead and you can expand them in the tree and see their nesting levels as well.
Okay.
And you can also get to, if you wanted to get to the flat list of them, and which one thing I hadn't demoed really is that when you come to these lists that give you the flat lists of the objects as well, is we actually also can get into what we call is if you go in from this point of view of the lists, especially let me give you an example of let's do a cluster. So if we come to the cluster and we've basically got the navigate, we're in navigator mode now, or what we kind of call object navigator, list mode. Now if I open the cluster, I see actually the cluster in here what we call to be the object navigator view of the cluster rather than the tree view. And what this does is, as you can see, is you could quite easily come in and look at all the different object types right here. And of course, I haven't been doing it. But you can stay in context of this cluster and start looking at the data stores, for instance, or go ahead and look at probably one of your favorite ones to look at, the VMs or hosts, all very easily and quickly. And I could also get back to the context of my cluster. So what this did, though, is that normally, in order to see what data stores are connected to that cluster and networks, I would have had to jump, in VMs and all that, I would have had to jump between multiple trees to see that. So now instead, you just basically get this one cross-cutting view of the cluster, or any object. You look at an object navigator mode as well. So let me show you. Here's a pretty whizzy thing as well. So you can come into a VM, for instance, and decide. Notice whenever you see this arrow here, if I go ahead and click that arrow, it'll actually open this object as well in object navigator mode. So consider this like I'm actually kind of I'm traversing the graph of the objects, or it's kind of like I'm pivoting. So I've now pivoted on the VM. So for instance, I can look at desktop 1, I can look at VM network 1, go ahead and look at its related objects and see, okay, for desktop 1, what are the other VMs that are connected, reachable from desktop 1 through this network? So you can sort of see farther down the graph with this view than you normally could just using the trees and the center detail.
So the question sometimes comes up about where did vCenter maps go, and that was taken away because of performance reasons. This basically replicates a lot of the functionality. I did want to plug one thing that I've been working on for the last couple of months. If you go to the web address tiny.cc/webclientwiki, you'll get to a wiki book that I started creating, which contains a lot of these tips and UI elements that we've been talking about today. Obviously, the intention is for it to be crowdsourced, so everyone please go put in whatever you want.
And that reminds me, another place that you can go check stuff out. And one of is, our flings. And a pretty recent fling that was done for the web client is now there's basically Power Actions with Power CLI integrated into the web client, which some folks have liked using, have given a try and have been using that.
It's very popular. I do highly encourage you, if you're comfortable with Power CLI, to go try it.
Yes.
So you can kick off Power CLI stuff within the web client.
Yes, and you can work on you can work on your scripts as well in the web client.
Wow, that is pretty cool.
And once you've tried it, you don't need to come screaming about it should be a regular supported feature of the product. I know this.
It's like it is known.
Yes. Dennis has got it in his request bucket.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really cool feature. I did not know that. Or a really cool fling as of right now. So 2 more questions. The first one is, does the action to open a VM's console open within VMRC by default?
Great question. So, and Dennis can double check me on this. So if I click the thumbnail now, this big one, right, the nice big thumbnail, it currently always opens the HTML console, which is now, notice, I'm sure you've noticed, I'm on a Mac, in fact. So, if I click this, boom, I'm going to go right into the desktop client here, right? Right into my desktop console, right on my Mac, okay? If you're on Windows, as I recall, you have to now, currently you have to click the link for Launch Remote Console to get the Windows VMRC. Is that correct, Dennis?
Both are also accessible through the Actions menu. If you go to Actions, Console, Open Console. Oh, I thought both were. But click that and see what happens.
Let's see what happens.
You probably don't have the okay, so VMRC installable is currently available for Windows, and I believe the Mac one just launched a couple weeks ago. So I think if he had that one installed, then it might have worked.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that.
Yeah, I think that would have worked. And we're looking at smoothing that out a little bit, possibly.
Yeah.
I'd like to smooth it out and get it back to so if you did in fact click the thumbnail and you had the VMRC and you said yes, that's what I like to use, that's in fact where the web console would open for you.
Excellent. And then last but not least, and you knew this one was going to happen, but I'm only asking because it was asked of me. Is there a desire to make the web client full HTML5 rather than Flash?
What if I said there was not? That's a joke. That's a joke. Sorry. I guess I'm not supposed to make jokes like that when I'm representing the company. But no, we are investigating all options of getting off of Flash. I literally cannot give you more details than that right now. But we're aware, we're working on it, and we know that this is a big problem.
Cool.
Yes.
Alrighty. Well,
we did anticipate that question. I was doing a mock drum roll as soon as you started saying, we're going to ask this. You knew it was coming.
I saw it in the email as we were all talking about the upcoming webinar, but I figured I'd get it on the record anyways. That's excellent. Thank you guys very much. This has been really informative, and I'm super stoked about that Power CLI thing. I've loved Power CLI since day one. After been so tired of 500 clicks, I was like, okay, scripting, yes. So that's awesome, and definitely looking forward to further advancements within the web client.
Thank you for all your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for letting us demo the client today, and please, everyone, we greatly appreciated your feedback. We've been listening, and we will greatly appreciate any more feedback you have to give us. And once again, thanks so much for having us today.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's been our pleasure. Cody, do you have any last things to say? If you are still on the line. If not, I am indeed. Oh, okay. Cool. There you are.
Okay, so I may have dorked the recording, so we're done anyways.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and we'll see you guys next week. Thank you.
Great. Bye-bye.
All righty. Oh.